In the quiet corners of an old university archive, secrets linger, hidden in leather-bound ledgers, faded manuscripts, and cryptic symbols. What begins as a student's curiosity quickly unravels a web of obsession, betrayal, and murder. For decades, a network of scholars operated in shadows, orchestrating events with precision, and leaving behind a trail of unexplained disappearances. One young researcher dared to uncover the truth. One ledger became a map. One discovery could expose a conspiracy that no one was meant to see. But in this university, knowledge has always come at a price, and some secrets are meant to endure long after the people who kept them are gone. It began, as most unsettling stories do, in silence. The kind of quiet that stretches over a university archive late at night, when the fluorescent lights hum faintly above rows of leather-bound books, and dust motes hang like tiny, hovering witnesses. It was in this silence that Marissa Cole, a graduate student in medieval history, discovered the first anomaly, a misplaced ledger, tucked behind a stack of manuscripts that should have been untouched for decades. Marissa had always been meticulous. At 27, she carried herself with a quiet authority uncommon among students, the kind of presence that made even professors defer to her judgment. That night, she was working late in the Graydon Archive, a cavernous basement of the university's oldest library. It smelled of old paper and ink, with a faint hint of something metallic she couldn't identify. She reached for the ledger, leather cracked and fragile, and noticed an odd pattern on the spine. Tiny notches, worn into a shape almost like a code. She opened it, expecting to find a simple record of donations and acquisitions. Instead, the pages were filled with a jumble of names, dates, and symbols she didn't recognize. Some entries were mundane, a shipment of parchment, the purchase of ink, but others were cryptic. Marginalia, written in the careful hand of someone who clearly knew the collection intimately, hinted at events outside the academic realm. One line, in particular, made her pause: "The last to enter the hall did not leave." Marissa's first thought was that it was a joke, perhaps a note left by an eccentric archivist. But something in the phrasing felt deliberate. She flipped through the ledger, scanning dates, and noticed a pattern emerging. Each entry with a cryptic comment coincided with a professor's tenure. Some had ended suddenly, others had disappeared from the university entirely, their departures unrecorded, unexplained. Curiosity turned to obsession. Marissa cross-referenced the names with the university's personnel records, digging through decades of faculty files. Then, almost casually, she stumbled upon a news clipping tucked between pages of an old historical manuscript. The date was 1978. The headline was simple, almost innocuous: "Local professor found dead in study." But the photograph beneath it told a different story. The man's expression was frozen in terror, eyes wide, hands clutching at something invisible. His death had been officially ruled accidental, a fall down a staircase, but the details were sketchy, inconsistent. Marissa could feel the hair rise at the back of her neck. Something wasn't right. She began pulling more books from the archive, each one older than the last, and noticed subtle irregularities in the margins. Underneath the scholarly notes, there were annotations in a cipher she could barely decipher, references to meetings, initials, dates, locations. Someone had been chronicling more than just the university's history. They had been chronicling lives. At first, she thought it was a single archivist's obsession. But as the nights wore on, as she copied and catalogued page after page, a pattern emerged too precise to dismiss. Professors linked by letters and symbols, all converging on one elusive figure, someone simply referred to as H. Cross-referencing faculty files, Marissa began to suspect that H was no ordinary professor. Whispers in old departmental newsletters hinted at a man with influence, feared for his knowledge and temper. The deeper she went, the more dangerous it felt. Her phone would ring at odd hours with no one on the line. Shadows seemed to linger in the stacks of the Graydon archive. She told herself it was paranoia, the side effect of obsessing over dusty manuscripts, yet the unease never left. Then, one evening, she found it. A manuscript so old it crumbled at the edges, bound in leather of a type she couldn't identify. The text was in Latin, but the annotations, again, that familiar cipher, led her to a date, June 14, 1978. The same day the professor in the newspaper clipping had died. This manuscript detailed a university ritual, a gathering of scholars under the pretense of a symposium, but the margins contained notes suggesting darker intentions. Names were circled, symbols indicated movement through the hallways, and one line, nearly erased, read, "He will not speak again." Marissa's hands shook. The ledger, the manuscripts, the annotations, they were more than historical curiosities. They were a record. A map. A confession. She approached Dr. Alan Smythe, the current head archivist, cautiously. Smythe was a man of reputation, respected in academic circles, with a keen interest in medieval texts and an encyclopedic memory of the university's collection. She showed him her findings, the ledger, the coded annotations. Smythe's reaction was subtle, almost imperceptible. His eyes flicked over the pages, a micro-expression of recognition crossing his face before he masked it with professional detachment. "Fascinating," he said, voice steady. "But these are probably just old notes. Scholars have long had eccentric habits." Marissa didn't believe him. Something about the way he handled the manuscripts, the way his fingers hesitated over certain annotations, told her he knew more than he was letting on. She began documenting everything, scanning pages, photographing codes, transcribing symbols. Every entry she traced led to a network of professors who had long left the university, and a few who remained, influential and untouchable. Her investigation took her outside the library, to the dusty basements of academic archives across the city, to old professors' homes, some abandoned, others meticulously maintained. Each visit brought whispers of the past, a caretaker recalling a late-night visitor, a former student describing a professor's sudden disappearance, a retired librarian remembering the strange behavior of H in the 1970s. It was during a visit to one of these abandoned homes that she found the first tangible link to murder. Behind a false panel in the study, wrapped in waxed cloth, were letters and photographs. The letters, yellowed and brittle, detailed meetings and disputes, grievances that had escalated beyond words. One photograph showed a group of men in ceremonial robes, standing over an indistinct figure lying prone on the floor. The composition was blurred, the camera angle off, but the sense of menace was undeniable. Marissa returned to the university, heart pounding. She confronted Smythe again, this time armed with the letters, the ledger, the photographs. He didn't deny anything. Instead, he told her a story in a low, deliberate voice. "The university has always had its traditions," he said. "Some think of them as eccentric, others as necessary. The archive is more than a library. It's a record. A code. Knowledge has always had a price here. Some paid it with silence. Others, with their lives." The implication was clear. The professors linked in her research were not just colleagues, they were participants in a decades-long conspiracy, a shadow network operating under the guise of academia. And H, the man at the center, had orchestrated events with a precision that left no evidence, except for the one place he underestimated, the archive. Marissa's next discovery was almost cinematic in its horror. A hidden drawer within the Graydon archive, sealed for over 40 years, contained journals written by H himself. The entries were meticulous, calculating. He chronicled decisions to remove threats, manipulate colleagues, even eliminate a dissenting professor. The language was clinical, devoid of remorse. Each passage ended with a symbol, a simple sigil representing control, mastery, and secrecy. As she read, a slow realization set in, this was not just history. This was confession. The archive itself had become a ledger of human life, a meticulous record of power and murder, its coded margins connecting names, dates, and deaths that had never been solved. Marissa wanted to go public. She wanted to expose the network, to bring justice to the dead. But she hesitated. Every step she took drew attention. Letters left on her desk, phone calls from unknown numbers, shadows glimpsed in the library's hallways. She felt the weight of unseen eyes tracking her movements. In the end, she did what few could do. She copied the materials, digitized the ledger, photographed every symbol, transcribed every note. And then she left the university, carrying the burden of secrets never meant to be uncovered. The archived manuscripts, the hidden compartments, the coded annotations, they remained behind, silent witnesses to a system of control and violence that had endured for decades. Even now, the thought lingers. In the quiet corners of the Graydon archive, someone is still watching, still recording, still ensuring the code survives. Every time a new book is catalogued, every time a student reaches for a manuscript, the ledger waits. The symbols remain, waiting for the next curious hand to trace their meaning. Because in that university, knowledge has always come at a price. And some secrets are meant to endure, long after the people who kept them are gone. In the end, the archive speaks, but only to those who listen. And Marissa learned, far too late, that some books are better left unread.